if you, that pamphlet that I gave out and passed around has got our web address on it, GLLKA.org, Great Lakes Lighthouse Keepers Association.org, and there's more information on that you can shake a stick at. But one of the things is a map of lighthouses of all the Great Lakes. And what we are looking at today, the very first one we're going to look at is, so if you go just west of the bridge, which would be up this line right here, and right there is St. Helena Island. And the Great Lakes Lighthouse Keepers, we own that. They have been working on it for 40 years. It is absolutely beautiful. So if you look at our website and you scroll down the page, you're going to see these two lighthouses. But underneath each of them is a thing that says St. Helena webcam or Sheboygan webcam. You click on those and it's going to give you the opportunity to choose from several live cameras. St. Helena has 4 of them. 4 live cameras year-round. But anyway, when you click on that button, the Sheboygan, the first one you're going to see is the downriver of the Sheboygan River. It's a very, very busy commercial river. Yesterday there was a gasoline tanker came in. There was a tug that pushed him into the dock. There's always a ton of activity on that, and we get about 20,000 hits a month on that particular camera, which promotes lighthouses. It brings people to our website if they want to do any gift shopping or anything. But mostly it just lets people see what's going on in Michigan, so that in Christmas Day, when you guys don't get lake effect snow, and we do, and you've got a beautiful sunny day, you can click on the cameras and watch us in a snow blizzard. So they're really nice to, and they don't cost a thing. And there you can see there's a gasoline tanker right there that was taken off the camera. And this is the north view off the camera on St. Helena. St. Helena, again, is about 7 miles west of the bridge. The other thing that you can do on these cameras is over on the left-hand side, which you cannot see right here, is a little arrow. You can click on that arrow, and it'll let you go back like 2 months, and it'll give you the whole 24 hours in about 3 or 4 minutes. It's absolutely fascinating to watch. You can watch the moon come up. You can watch planets as the Earth turns. So again, that's on that thing that I gave you there. So this is St. Helena Lighthouse, and this is the one we're going to talk about first. And I don't normally talk about the lighthouses themselves. I talk about the people that ran them, and what happened in their time. And the first keeper we do not have a picture of. His name is Charles Marshall. Charles was one of 10 children from William Marshall off of Mackinac Island. He had 6 sons, and they were all lighthouse keepers. And 2 of them, it was their demise, and one of his grandchildren also died at one of the lighthouses. The lighthouse keeper we're looking at again is going to be named Charles Marshall. He began his lighthouse career at Waugoshance on September 22nd, 1884. And on July 6th, 1888, he was transferred to St. Helena Lighthouse. He had a little girl, 2 years old. Her name was Olive. She died at the lighthouse in November of 1892. We found newspaper articles that said she was buried in St. Ignace, but nobody can find her grave. Quite common back then that people would bury their children where they were working fully with the intent to come back at some point in time and be buried with them, and it just usually didn't happen. So we have a lot of correspondence from Charles Marshall back to the district inspector in Chicago. And I've got one here, 1892, December 16th. Sir, I write for permission to leave the station after the close of navigation. My wife is sick. I got to take her to the mainland until she gets better. Respectfully, Charles Marshall, St. Ignace, Michigan. And being that the lighthouse was closer to St. Ignace than anywhere else, that's where he picked up his mail. That's where his mail was how he got paid. And so he's out there on the island. He's got his wife literally as an assistant keeper for free, and his children. But the letter I just read, we see over and over and over again from Charles, I've got to take my wife to the mainland. She is sick. In 1895, Charles builds a home in Mackinac City. Mackinac City has doctors. Mackinac City has schools. Mackinac City has people that his wife and children can associate with, go to school. So it's a huge plus. So again, this is just location of St. Helena, and Charles would come over here. There was a dock. So after he moved his wife to the mainland, built the house in 1895 and built and moved his wife over here, he would take a little sailboat and come over here twice a week, pick up supplies, visit with his family, and go back to the island. And at the island, he would remain out there alone. Now I've got a couple other slides here that just show, they have nothing to do with the story, but this is who resurrected this lighthouse. So for the last 40 years, Boy Scout troops out of Ann Arbor have been going out there and renovating that lighthouse. Picture on the left, the lantern is gone, windows are all broke out. So once the Coast Guard shut the lighthouse down, they left it to vandals. Anything that couldn't be stolen was destroyed. And so that's where the Boy Scouts come in on this St. Helena. This is, like I said, this is again one that we own, the same room, the same spot, after 40 years. And Boy Scout troops still, to this day, go out there usually for a week or two with their parents in the springtime, and they do lots of small chores. When they were first working out there, I don't think OSHA pushed them too hard, but now with everybody suing, I don't think they do anything that's on a ladder. But this gives you some idea of what it looked like before and what it looks like now. Before and after. The work that has been done out there, this lighthouse is absolutely gorgeous. Before and after. So we're back to Charles Marshall. Charles Marshall gets his family set up in the summer over in Mackinac City. So he's out there on the lighthouse alone. He's whitewashing the tower. It's a lime-based white paint that had to be done almost every year. It would keep the water out, but it would also allow water in the brick to evaporate out also. So the new paints they put out now keep the water out, but they don't let the moisture get away from the brick. And what happens is the moisture moves to the outside of the brick, freezes in the winter, and starts chipping and popping the brick. So, so Charles is up there, 1895, and he's whitewashing the tower. He's 15 foot from the top, he's 45 foot in the air, and he loses control of the rope that controls his going up and down. This is, again, the end of July. At that point in time, on the Great Lakes, there were 3,000 sailing ships. So at any point in time during the day, Charles Marshall could see 4, 5, 6 ships out in the lake. And so he waves at them. I need help. And they go by and they wave, good to see ya. So Charles sits there and bakes in the sun all day. He's on the south side where the white tower is now reflecting all that heat back on him. At the end of the day, he's got a small pieces of rope with him. He ties himself onto that chair that he has used to move up and down, because he's afraid he's going to fall off. He's starting to shiver quite violently. A passing tug going by notices the light is not on. And the captain of that tug said, this is one of the best light keepers on the Great Lakes. He never fails to light that light. Something is wrong. So he pulls his tug in close to shore, puts his boat over the side, and sends 4 crewmen into the lighthouse, where they find Charles. They lower him to the ground, and they seek help for him. Now, when I was pointing at Mackinac City, old Mackinac Point Lighthouse there, Charles's brother, George, is the light keeper there. So he is given word that his brother is quite ill after being on the light, and his brother writes this letter on July the 24th. Sir, he's writing to the inspector of lighthouse keepers again in Chicago. The keeper of St. Helena is out of his head since the 22nd of this month. I have been to St. Helena and had him sent to St. Ignace for medical treatment, his wife with him. I left Mr. George Randolph to take care of the light until the keeper's wife goes back. I could not stay myself any longer. His wife can take care of the station until the inspector finds if Charles Marshall is or will be capable to go back. I did not want to come away without making some arrangements, hoping I have done right in this matter. Very respectfully, George Marshall. Now he's talking about his younger brother here. In Mackinac City at the time, there was a little newspaper. It was, I shouldn't call it a newspaper. It was about the size of this sheet of paper. It was written by Mrs. Kaufman, and eventually a lot of her letters were put together and there was a book made, and it was called The Savage Straits. But on August the 3rd, her little paper was called the Mackinac Witness. She writes, Charles Marshall, keeper of the St. Helena Island Light, received a sunstroke last week and was taken to St. Ignace and treated by Dr. Young, who injected morphine. He began to get worse and was brought here for his brother George to take care of. By meaning brought here, she means brought from St. Ignace to Mackinac City. Dr. Brown was called and pulled him through all right. Mr. Marshall went back to his lighthouse entirely recovered. We are going to find out that that was not entirely correct. So after he goes back to work, his brother George writes again, "Sir, the keeper of St. Helena is ready to go back to his light. It is now blowing a heavy gale. As soon as this wind goes down, he will start for his station. The doctor tells him that he is out of all danger." After the accident, he continues to stay alone out to St. Helena Lighthouse. But now his letters are taking a different turn. In November 1st, he writes, "Sir, I write for permission to leave St. Helena Light for the winter after the close of navigation. My wife and little girl is ailing, and I would like to move to Mackinac City where they can get medical aid." So his family is over there, but he wants to go with them. And 1895, December 11th, he writes to the district inspector again, "Sir, my wife is sick at Mackinac City. I left a man in charge of my light. I left the light on the 9th day of December." So we see over and over and over again in the lighthouse logs that Charles is writing to go back to Mackinac City where his wife is ill. Until 1900, this continues. Then on November 23rd, Charles writes, Charles takes a demotion. He is the keeper, and I read they made about $340 a year back then. He takes a demotion to go to Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse and be the assistant keeper for his brother. The gentleman, the assistant keeper at Old Mackinac Lighthouse, is named George Leggett. He then takes the full promotion to go over to St. Helena to be the new keeper. And curiosity, you've got to ask yourself, why would he take a demotion when everything seems to be going well and swap it out? The following spring, June 25th, 1901, George Leggett is the new keeper at St. Helena, and he's going to Mackinac City in the little sailboat that Charles had used all those years. A sudden storm capsizes his boat 100 yards off the dock, and he drowns. Neither he nor his boat is ever found. The following day, his wife writes a letter to the the director of Lighthouse in Chicago again. She's talking about her husband here. "Sir, from all accounts, Mr. Leggett was capsized in a squall within 200 feet of the Citizens Dock at Mackinac City yesterday noon, June the 25th, while going for supplies. I have the engineers men here building the boathouse. I will continue the light until Mr. Fontaine relieves me. Mr. Bruce kindly offering to assist me. As Mr. Leggett had his triplicates and books almost ready to turn over to the new keeper, I will have no difficulty with that." So apparently, George Leggett was leaving St. Helena Lighthouse soon. He had all of his books finished and ready to be turned over to the new keeper, whoever that was going to be. "I will have no difficulty with that. If in case Mr. Leggett's body should be found, they are grappling for it today will I have to stand the expense of the funeral? So this is back in a time when you didn't have divers to go down. They would take like huge treble hooks and they would drag them along the bottom of the lake hoping to snag the body. Will you please ask Mr. George Marshall to take charge? I am unable to, as I expect to be confined in about 6 weeks, and I'm afraid the shock would absolutely prostrate me. Would you please send the check as usual to GLLKA? That will be the only money I will have in the world, as Mr. Leggett took what cash we had along with him. It will enable me to settle up and go to my parents in Chicago, which I will do as soon as I receive it and Mr. Fontaine arrives. Will you please give me permission to leave household goods with Mr. Fontaine until the Delphia comes up here again, as freight is so high from here to Chicago. It would help me very much if the Delphia could move it for me. This seems a heartless letter, but I have got to be brave for the sake of my children. Hoping to hear from you soon, I remain respectfully, Mrs. George Leggett. So, if things can't get any worse, hold my beer. Charles Marshall's health continued to deteriorate, and in April of 1902, George Marshall, his older brother, writes in the old Mackinac Point logbook about his brother Charles, adjudged insane and taken away to the Traverse City state mental institution. So we now know that the brain damage that he had from the sunstroke slowly worked on him until the point, and which is why then we now know why he would have made the transfer. He couldn't do the work himself, but hopefully that his older brother could help him and he could still manage. He was confined to the state mental hospital for the rest of his life. We know that Charles died in the state hospital on August 12, 1926. Charles' wife, Rose, the one who's been so ill so often, so many times, she died in 1907, leaving their children, Chester, Ethel, and Nora, orphans, and they were then adopted by George, his older brother, and would live at Old Mackinac Point Lighthouse until they finished school and moved away. We were able to get this picture from the Mackinac Island State Historic Parks. This is his older brother Charles, or I mean his older brother George. We have, like I said, we have no pictures of Charles. And if you're ever up in Mackinac and you go to this lighthouse, this is the only picture I've ever seen that shows the dock that used to be there, but this is not the one that he was headed to, because it says in his report he was headed to the Citizens Dock, which is just around the point right here. So this might not have even been there in 1900. This is St. Helena today. A nice fresh white coat of paint on the tower after having the bricks finished. The lighthouse, this is being done, they're calling it a Boy Scout project, but it's all Boy Scout dads and stuff that are doing this because the kids can't get up on the roof. So they're doing groundwork. If you're going over with us to be a docent, you'll leave from the St. Ignace side and come out by one of those. If you want to go over there and spend the afternoon, our website will have, the dates for next summer when that would be available. And we have to use a licensed captain for that. So the pump organ came over in a Zodiac. There's pictures of it. You can see water is pumped, toilets are pit. We have electricity out there, to some degree. If you want to charge your cell phone, you want to charge your laptop, there's power out there. You want to blow dry your hair, you're out of luck. But so I would highly recommend, if you ever wanted, it's beautiful out there. But if you ever wanted to go out there and you know, like be a docent or something, I would highly recommend that you take the afternoon tour so you have a better idea. You saw the pictures, everything there is absolutely beautiful. This is Lansing Shoal. It is about 40 miles west of the bridge. You can't see it from there. If you're crossing the bridge, you see a light out there, that is White Shoal right there. So this lighthouse right here is 40 miles out, and Squaw Island is right here. And when Lansing Shoal was first opened up, it was because Squaw Island had been deemed too far out of the way. To get from point A to point B is normally a straight line. To do the Lansing Shoal story, I'm not going to take a straight line. I'm going to veer way off of where we're going to end up. This lighthouse is kind of unique in how it was built. In Milwaukee, they made concrete boxes. So if you can imagine a shoe box, 20 feet by 54 feet by 21 feet high, 2 feet thick concrete. 4 of these caissons were towed out into place from Milwaukee all the way here, and that's quite a little jaunt, and there was not much freeboard left, so they would have had to do it on a day when it would have been extremely calm so that waves didn't splash into those concrete boxes and sink it. Once it was put out there in place, all 4 boxes were put together, and they stuck about a foot out of the water, sitting on the bottom. At that point in time, with these concrete boxes sitting on the bottom, just barely out of the water, they poured 7 foot thick of concrete on the top. They made this an absolute fortress. They then poured the walls that you see with the portholes in them. That's 30 inches thick of concrete. This is an absolute fortress designed to withstand anything that nature can send at it. We're going back to November 7th, 1940. Now, remember our lighthouse. This is where we started and where we're going to go back to. This is the brand new Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It opened in July of 1940. This is November 7th. So what happened with this brand new bridge, which was the 3rd largest bridge in the world at the time, is the wind bounced it. And it was 40 mile an hour or less wind. It was not a big wind. The reason they have videos of it, it had been bouncing, slowly swaying since the day they built it. So engineers were there on November 7th to take video of it and to try to figure out what they were going to do to stop it from bouncing. And the Mother Nature said, I'll show you how to make it stop from bouncing. She tore it down. So this was not much of a storm. This was not much of a storm. Started up here in Washington, traveled across the plains, came across, did what the meteorologists call a panhandle hook, and headed for the Great Lakes. Wasn't much of a storm, 40 miles an hour. I mean, we'll probably have that in the next week. So this you have to know what's going on here. So November 7th to November 11th. So the storm starts here, comes down here, meets up with another storm, and heads for the Great Lakes. Meteorologists at that time worked a half a day on Sunday. Meteorologists at that time work an 8-hour day, Monday through Friday. So when they came in, the meteorologists that were working the day before Armistice Day, which is our Veterans Day today, they came in on Sunday, and they saw a couple little weak storms here. To get over top of the Rocky Mountains, those storms always break up. So the meteorologist went home. There is a thing, and I've read it several times, it's like societal, a storm or an event that is so large that it changes society. Monday morning, the meteorologists come into work. It's a holiday. It's a federal holiday. Everybody's got the day off. In Chicago, it's 60 degrees, November 11th. Everybody, a lot of people were still working, but federal employees had the day off. A lot of people took 3-day weekends, just like we currently do. And the meteorologists get to work, and they start looking at the barometric pressure readings that have crossed over the Rockies and are headed to the Great Lakes. And I don't know if stupefied is a word, but that's what they were. It had barometric pressure readings so low they had never seen them before. Only one other time in recorded history has the barometer got as low as what it did for that storm in the Great Lakes region. This is the temperature in Chicago, 63 degrees at 11 o'clock. 3 o'clock, it's 30 degrees. 5 o'clock, it's less than 30. A 40-degree drop in less than 5 hours. The meteorologists, they're dumbfounded. They started calling radio stations, put out emergency bulletins. They started calling newspapers. If you haven't printed yet, tell people to seek shelter. This is a monster storm that is coming into the Great Lakes, in the Great Lakes region. 3 freighters went down on Lake Michigan. Nobody warned the captains that this storm was coming, and they didn't have radios to hear that this storm was coming, so they went out on the Great Lakes. The wind blew over 100 miles an hour on Lake Michigan west. Milwaukee recorded 126 mile an hour wind. But there's a book I will tell you, which is a fascinating, easy read. I call it bathroom reading because it's only like 1-page chapters. It's called All Hell Broke Loose, and it's written by the people of Minneapolis on the 50th anniversary of that storm, what they went through. There was, I don't know, I've got it here someplace, there was, there was 85 duck hunters froze to death in the 3 states at the headlands of the Mississippi River. 85 duck hunters froze to death that day in 3 states. And some of the survivors said the ones that died were the lucky ones. They lost their feet, their feet froze off, their hands froze off. This storm was, I can only think of one other storm, the storm of 2013, or 1913, that compares with this. But this one brought 100-mile-an-hour winds consistent from out of the south. So they blew from Chicago to the Straits of Mackinac, 100 miles an hour. At the end of the storm, Chicago Harbor had dropped 5 feet. Beaver Island Harbor had raised 5 feet. These are pictures taken out of Minneapolis. I love weather. Love reading about weather, love weather history. When the weatherman says on TV, okay, it's a good night to sit by the fire and stay in, my wife and I put our jackets on and head out. We love weather. And this storm, the accuracy of death counts by meteorologists today would say they're baloney. There was a lot more people died in that storm than that storm is given credit for. After this storm, weather forecasting would be a 24-hour-a-day job, 7 days a week. Never again was the federal government going to be taken to task for not having weather people on and allowing hundreds of people to die. In the book, All Hell Broke Loose, it's I don't know, probably 75 short stories of what happened. Women said it was 55 degrees. We lived in Minneapolis. I was going to work at the Woolworths, wherever she was working. She said, I went to work, I wore my skirt, wore my high heels, I had a light sweater when I went to work. When I came out of work at 4:30, I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me because the snow was blowing 80 miles an hour. The people talked about what they went through. Farmers got lost between their home and their barn. Dairy farmers got lost because they made that trip a couple times a day all their lives, milking their cows. Several of them got lost, and they found their bodies after the storm out in the field next to the barn, frozen to death. Iowa competed with Michigan for the top fruit-producing state in the nation at that time. It wasn't Michigan and Washington, it was Michigan and Iowa. Iowa would never again be a top fruit-producing state. The sleet that covered their fruit trees then knocked them all down, destroyed all their orchards. Farmers, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, lost all their turkeys, were selling them for 25 cents a piece if they could find a buyer. Cattle, a lot of cattle. I've read a lot of reports of cattle dying in the tens of thousands, but I don't see much on dairy cows. I think the farmers left them in the barn during that storm. It was, I know, we're going to get back to our lighthouse. So this is downtown Minneapolis. This is in the suburbs of Minneapolis. The storm had a, you talked or you read what these people went through, and it's just unbelievable. And it's fascinating if you're into history to read, because I'm thinking the duck hunters, why didn't they leave when this weather started getting bad? They could see it come as a black cloud. And if you read, they'll say, we never saw so many ducks. The weather, the front, was pushing ducks ahead of it, and they were coming by the thousands, by the hundreds of thousands. Guys were saying we couldn't hit the ducks because the ducks could normally fly at 30, 40 miles an hour. Well, with a 100-mile-an-hour tailwind on them, they were coming by us so fast we couldn't hit them. And they were so excited that they stayed until it was too late to get out of the swamps. The waves were over their boats, and it's absolutely a fascinating. There's one of the stories, if you go to Facebook, or I think it's YouTube, I'm not sure where. It's called, it was an article written, I think, in Outdoor Life, and it's called The Day the Duck Hunters Died. This storm was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Now, we're back to our fortress. Remember, she's got 7 foot of concrete on top of those 30-inch thick walls of the cement caissons underneath her. These walls are 30 inches thick. I'm going to read just a little bit of what the keeper's log says on this particular day. But I'm going to, before I do that, he's November 2nd. He's got general Saturday's cleaning, light station duty, strong west-southwest, partly cloudy. November 5th, helping Mr. Hostetler working on the control lens, strong southwest to strong northwest, cloudy. 2 sentences is all he writes. There's normally, you will read, I've read a lot, that there's normally 4 keepers at a light station like this. Normal, 3 on, 3 working, 1 off. In this particular light station, they were working 2 on, 2 off. So 2 guys would work for 2 weeks, and then they'd be swapped out with another 2 guys. November 11th, Armistice Day. Barometer has been going down all day. 4:10 p.m., it is 28.1. We tightened all the portholes and we put extra fastening on the south door of the engine room. 6 p.m., both glasses in the storeroom portholes broke out. 6:30 p.m., the south doors tore away, filling the engine with water and put out the fire in the heating boiler. We pulled all the switch on the electric and equipment, and everything is out of commission. We called the United States Coast Guard and told them to report station is now out of operation. I believe it is now blowing 80 miles per hour and cold with some snow. 12 midnight. It is blowing just as hard, very steady, about 60 miles per hour and getting colder. The crib is icing, ice all over. 8 a.m. What a night we had. This morning, everything is washing around in the engine room, and every sea washes across the engine room floor. The south door is over in the north entrance. As near as we dare go is the landing on the stairs, and it is awful to see. Every sea coming in and ripping something away and stirring it up with the rest of the wreck. 12 noon. Not blowing as hard as it was, but plenty hard. And the wind seems to shift a little from the south-southwest to the west, and a heavy sea is rolling from the southwest. 9 p.m. Wind northwest and plenty strong yet and very cold. We have been 27 hours without any fire, and I think I can get one going. 9:30 p.m. Got the fire going, but got all wet and am I cold. Got some more coal in the fire and steam is starting. Not so many seas coming in the door now, and our quarters is getting warm. There's a whole bunch more, but I picked out the highlights. There's about 4 to 8 inches of ice on all the windows and doors. Got out the north window when we chopped ice off the north boathouse door. This is not a picture from that storm, but this is what happens when the wind blows water up on the lighthouse and it freezes on the lighthouse. And what they had to do is go to the side of the least ice and take a small hatchet, chop a hole through the window where the ice is all. One of them crawled out, took another axe, went over to the door and chopped the door loose so they could actually get out of the building itself. November 14th, we're putting glass in the portholes. We only had 7 on hand. Working on Kohler number 3, 6 p.m., the tender Hollyhock arrived. Radio electrician worked over our transmitter and found them okay, so started them going. So what happened is 3 days later, a Coast Guard cutter came out to them, had electricians, mechanics, it had all the stuff they need to get them re-going. This is 7 foot of concrete. It's the bottom of the lighthouse. This is near Beaver Island. The water is now up to here with 26 to 35 foot waves coming over top of the lighthouse. Several weeks after this storm, fishermen over in Escanaba found a bottle with a note in it, and it was from the lightkeepers saying they felt their lives were in danger, and they gave the date and time. So this is, as I said before, you know, I know people talk about Fresnel lenses and whatnot. I talk about the people, what they went through, what they lived through, and what they didn't live through. This lighthouse is for sale. I don't think anyone has purchased it. The federal government is selling them all off if they can find a buyer. It is, but if you love to read about history, this storm is a dandy. You'll find all kinds of newspaper articles on it and the things that happened. There's the Novaduck went over by, I want to say, whereabouts at? The Novaduck was near Pentwater?
I think so.
Okay. She grounded on a reef in that storm. She had 25 to 35 foot waves going over it. It was tearing, slowly but surely, tearing the ship apart. The Coast Guard started out with a small cutter to rescue them, and they quickly turned around. And you cannot fault the Coast Guard guys. Number one, these kids are from New Jersey, Atlanta, and all of a sudden they're running a boat in 25 to 35 foot waves. I don't blame them. I would have done the same thing. But there was a fisherman there by the name of Cross. And if you go to Charlevoix today, there's Cross Fisheries. That's one of the brothers, or maybe one of the children now. The Cross brothers were famous fishermen. They all came from Beaver Island. And so people on shore were watching this freighter get just pummeled with these enormous waves. They had lost 2 cooks, had already been washed overboard. And it was not going to be long for the rest of the ship to be torn apart and its crew. And now there's a lot of talk, a lot of speculation. You can find this in print somewhere. I'm not making this up. This little Coast Guard, or this little fishing tug, an enclosed fishing tug, with its crew of 3, takes off bright and early in the morning, as soon as morning daybreak got, in 25 to 35 foot seas to rescue these people. What I'm saying is you will see hints multiple times that they might have got some courage in the local pub all night. So they went out, and there's an opening on the top, like a 4-foot by 4-foot door to let fresh air in when they're cleaning fish and stuff. And the captain would go past the ship, and then he would turn around and come back past the ship with the wind, with the waves, and one of the people on the ship would jump onto the top of his boat. His 2 crewmen would then pull that person inside. And after 17 trips, he had the entire crew of that boat and brought them back alive. The Great Lakes senators asked Congress that these guys be given the highest medal of heroism that the government could give. The Coast Guard fought it, and they fought it because they thought it made them look bad. And so they were never given it, but there's books written on these guys. Rick Mixters, I think, might have interviewed one of the crew in one of his videos. So this was that storm, and that's probably where I should quit. Anybody have any questions of me? Go ahead.
Is the lighthouse occupied?
No. This lighthouse is, I have the date. It was like most of them was shut down in the 80s, and 1976 she was shut down. She has a solar panel like all the rest of them and a small acrylic lens. Also, 1995, during a clear day, the 1,000-foot freighter Indiana Harbor ran into the lighthouse. These boats have automatic pilots, you know, that take it, and somebody wasn't paying attention, got too close and hit. The lighthouse wasn't hurt, and the Indiana Harbor wasn't hurt bad either. It just bruised the ego of who was ever in the pilot house at that day. But
it was the lighthouse fault. It was in the way.
Any other questions?
Who owns McGulphin Point?
Who owns McGulphin Point? Emmett County. I was on the Board of Commissioners when I was the chairman of the board when we purchased it. And as a elected official, every pie in the sky idea that comes by, and somebody says, you guys need to buy that lighthouse. Well, we had been involved in a lawsuit just below it, and it came up how old that lighthouse was. It was in the first deeded property in the state of Michigan. Detroit, Mackinac Island, and I believe Chicago were in the treaty. I can't remember what year the treaty was, but it was the late 1700s. Anyway, I told the commissioner that wanted to purchase it, I said, I don't think we can pull that off. And he said, Jim, this lighthouse doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to all of us. He goes, you're good at talking. You go do the talk, and I'll have your back. I'll take care of the politics behind you. And he did, and we did, and so now that one's owned by Emmett County. So other than that, I'm going to drive back to Mackinac tonight. So I won't see the colors on the way back. I saw them on the way down. And I'm telling you, if you're going out there just north of Gaylord right now, it's fantastic. All those sugar maples are reds and oranges, beautiful. So I thank you guys for inviting me, and we'll do this again sometime if you want. So thank you.